the directness of the Dhamma presentation. It's called Sanditthiko, directly perceivable, kaliko, not something that's delayed in time, so you can have it directly now. Ehipassiko, it encourages. Opanayiko, it's accessible, relevant, furthering. As you touch into that Dhamma, it encourages one to go further. And so we start beginning with something very accessible, immediate, which is your own body. Something you don't have to think about or believe in. It's there with you, and so this makes this a very manageable practice. And we're using the body to stabilize mental attention. And so just this much, and there are results of doing just that. So using the body to stabilize attention. The results are that the mood of the mind changes because the mind is not being stirred up or dragged down by other considerations, mental considerations of the past, the future, oneself or others. And when you recognize that what the mind deals with, operates in, are all imaginary experiences. The future is imagined, we don't really know it. We see the past through a very distorted lens. We have a biased perception of ourselves, often quite unpleasant. We have particular impressions of other people, which can be biased also. So a lot of the mind is about imaginations and biases. And so even with your own body, you're not asking to get a particularly detailed experience, just the sense of it has a stability to it, there's an uprise to it, the energy of that can steady and stable. That's not a mental creation. If you sit still and breathe and let your breathing go in and out clearly, your body does feel more settled. That's not a mental imagination, that's an actual perceivable fact. And so it's something you can do that changes your mind. You don't change your mind by changing your mind, you change your mind by bringing it into something else that's stable and steady. So this order, and we find the quality of orderliness has got an encouraging flavour to it. It makes us feel steady and calm. When the mind is ordered, regulated, soothed, steadied, it's much wiser. It's not so reactive. It's wiser and it sees things more clearly. We need to use something like our own body to help to just stabilize the mind. You see, the mind has no inherent stability to it. It's always moving. So you stabilize it, and then gives rise to this quality of discernment. Discernment arises from a steady mind, a mind made steady. And once you've got that flavour, that feeling for something quite natural, present, and stabilizing, and you notice that the order of nature is rhythmic. So breathing in, breathing out, sun goes up, the sun goes down, the days are regular, the seasons, things arise, things grow, things change, things pass. The flowers blossom, they come into ripeness, and they drop their petals. There's a regular process of order which is natural. It's not a particular thing, it's a process. And this process, when we adjust to it, gives us a sense of stability, because this is really the world we are born out of. We are our own bodies themselves arise, form, come into form, grow, age and pass. Yeah. And even in one day you can feel the body's energies changing from perhaps not very clear when you wake up, and then becoming more vigorous, and then very vigorous, and then becoming tired, and that waning process. Now, often the problem for human beings is the unwise mind tries to hold a particular thing, like a taste or a flavour or a thought or an idea. And it develops many of these. It likes to hold on to particular things, qualities. It holds on to mental things such as status or fame or reputation. Praise, it holds on to praise. And so it doesn't, this holding on, clinging, creates particular objects that in themselves are not accurate. That is, everything is really in the process of change, from one thing to another, from pleasant to moderate to unpleasant, from unpleasant to moderate to passing. You know, the changing process of things, and the mind wants to hold on to one particular aspect, believing that will give it the reward or the satisfaction. And this fundamental confusion or ignorance doesn't satisfy, and the unawakened mind thinks, oh, maybe it's because I'm holding on to the wrong thing, so I'll hold on to something else instead. We might hold on to our physical form, our appearance, yeah, or our wealth, or our status, or our possessions, and that doesn't quite give rise to satisfaction, because its nature is to be experienced as changeable. So the unawakened mind thinks, oh well, that didn't work, I'll try something else. Another thing, another thing, another thing. And when it begins to feel it's not able to find the right thing, it says, I must be doing something wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with me. You know, I can't find the right thing to hold on to. So then people hold on to beliefs, start praying to gods to help them out, to help them, you know, somebody's going to get me the right thing. Happiness, heaven, nibbana, whatever it is, I'm going to get it. And whatever way is going to help me to do that. Yeah, so this is the unawakened process. And so even when we meditate, we want to hold the right experience, get that experience, calm or steadiness, and hold it. And you realize, yeah, you can have it for a little while, but the real steadiness comes from the mind's capacity to allow things to change and experience, instead of things, to experience nature. That is, the nature arising and passing. Now, this arising and passing doesn't seem like a particularly wonderful or fulfilling experience, but the truth of the matter is, if you experience arising and passing, the mind itself, that which is witnessing or aware of arising and passing, feels very open and clear and peaceful, because it is in harmony with nature. So we're not as if we're looking for the particular experiences, but the quality of experiencing is the mind's nature. So it's like, we might say, if we use an analogy, you can see various things with the eyes, there's images, the Buddha, the trees, the people, so forth. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. And it will change, and your interest in it will change. You think, well, where's the really good thing to look at? It's all just changing. I can't see it. And so in this analogy, they say, well, the quality of seeing is the thing to notice. The quality of seeing. Similarly, with the mind, it's not the mind objects, the objects that fill the mind, that are the important thing, but the nature of the mind to be awake, non-clinging. And this awake is what we use the word Buddha to describe. The awakened mind is called Buddha or Buddho. It's not a thing. You can't hold it, you can't point to it, you can't have it, but you can be it. And it means there's a process whereby increasingly, as one practices and in daily life, you're witnessing, contemplating things, how life actually is. Pleasant, unpleasant, human, animal, vegetable, natural, artificial, days, nights, they're all subject to change. Refined mental experiences are subject to change. Gross mental experiences are subject to change. We incline towards more refined mental experiences because they bring steadiness, enough steadiness for the mind to find its composure in order to realize itself. So we use meditation topics in order to put aside other mental objects, and the mental objects that stir everything up and cultivate or stir things up and encourage worry, agitation, passion, greed, aversion, resistance, and so forth. They create unnecessary ripples in the mind. When you focus on the good or the stable or the clear, the mind is increasingly able to allow that quality to happen by itself. And from then its real insight wisdom is to then step back into the nature of mind. Now, so when you meditate, there are, of course, many systems you can use for meditation. But the principle is that the samatha principle and the mindfulness principle is to hold the mind steady on an object, a feeling, a sensation that allows it to settle, stable, or experience a steady focus. And this is where the very objects that we focus on, breathing in and out, or the subtle mental states that arise from that, can become objects of fascination, whereby one begins to hold those, thinking this state of samadhi or this state of peacefulness, this must be it, this is great, what do I do now? This is great, this is wonderful, or it's not quite right, what do I do now? And we get very obsessed with them. Yeah. And this is imbalanced. The true balance is to use the meditation objects just adequately to create a sense of stability where other energies die down, and then we investigate, it's called insight wisdom, what is the mind that is observing or feeling or experiencing this. And this means there's an increasing sense of what's called disengagement, viveka. We're not hanging on. Dispassion. One becomes cool about experience, not intense, not feverish, not grasping, not building up. So if you're meditating and thinking, well, I've got this state, what do I do next? It means you've gone into the habit of building something up, of trying to build up something. And our practice is not to build up. Building up is called becoming. Our practice is to neither to destroy, not to build up, not to destroy, but to awaken to the quality of mind itself. And this way, this experience of ceasing, which is the ceasing of the fascinations, the interest, the tendencies to get caught, or tendencies to search for some particular experience to have. You know, this is ceasing. You know, and people are very often in our people when they meditate are searching for have an experience. Or you go on a retreat to have an experience. Yeah. And yeah, how many retreats have you done? Oh, I've done 25 retreats. I had some good experiences, and now I want to do another one so that I can have a better experience. Then I'll add them all up and sort of decide which is the best experience, and then maybe then I can go and have another experience. And then when I finish meditating, then I can do something else to give me another experience. Yeah. And so, well, really one isn't really penetrating very deeply the nature of experience. Just changing the items. Yeah. And so if this is happening, it often does, our habits are like that, just to bear in mind, whatever you experience comes and goes, and what is it that knows experience? What is it that's aware of experience? That is not something that moves or changes. And this ceasing and relinquishing of the tendencies for the mind to reach out, to have experience, or to reach out to push away experience, or to calculate how good one is, how well one is, how skillful one is, whether one's half enlightened, sort of enlightened, nearly enlightened, sotapanna, anagami, how long it will take to become an anagami, whether a layperson can become an anagami, or you have to wait until the next life to become an anagami, but you could be a stream enterer maybe. You think, what's going on? This is proliferation, isn't it? And isn't it possible just you don't know? You don't know. And you notice the sense of unknowing and wanting to know. And the wanting to know, when you don't know, is called vicikicca, doubt, and this is a major obstacle. And it's still the fascination with experience, to find the right one. So we can feel that we are the right one. Yeah. Because the nature of experience is every experience you have gives rise to the sense of being the person who has that experience. You have a good experience, you feel, oh, I'm good, I'm okay. Bad experience, oh, really, I'm rotten, bad things happen to me. And when you can't get a good experience, oh, I'm really a failure, I can't have good experiences, I'm not doing things right. So the nature of experience is that it creates an experiencer. And the experiencer is never satisfied. Yeah? And we think, well, yeah, of course. Then, because I haven't had the right one yet. When I get the right one, I'll be satisfied. Problem is I haven't had the final culminating experience. You know, this is not a kaliko. This is always pushing forward in time. And what is directly knowable is that the full experience that will satisfy you has not happened yet. And if you consider it, yeah, you might say, well, maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe it's the nature of experience, phenomena, to be that way. And so, but this is not necessarily something we immediately accept, but you gradually grow less impassioned about feelings, perceptions, sensations, attitudes, mind states, and so forth. You get less impassioned And eventually you begin to recognize you have the ability to relinquish holding on to experiences or searching for another one. Now this we call the mind in itself. The citta resting on itself, not resting on a mood, subtle realm, formless realm, realm of form, sensation, feeling, perception. And this is something that is practicable. So as you cultivate, you see the relevance of that. Someone who is not attached in this way is able to live their life. They're not hungry, hankering for things. They're not bad-tempered and irritated by phenomena. They see no point in doing anything else than being truthful, because you don't need to create more anything other than what actually is. Because what is what is. So one is not interested in creating deceits or perceptions or exaggerations, because why bother? And so a person who is in touch with the mind in itself also lives a life of harmony and purity. So in this way, from the meditation practice and deep understanding, we're able to increasingly find ourselves living with order, with an order that's not just an idea, but an order that is the order of truth. This order of truth is what we call Dhamma. Therefore, this is our refuge, our guide, and our practice. So I'll stop there for this evening.
We have some pieces of paper in the box behind. You can write your questions if you have any. If you have written already, you can pass the slips of paper in front. Anybody? Yeah. Oh, the questions are at the back.
This one's a good one. I can answer this one. It's easy. This is true. This is truly a piece of paper. What's the next one? Is practicing deep concentration necessary to progress well in this life? I am quite comfortable feeling the pleasurable tingling sensation when I'm attentive to breathing while doing daily activities. I think with concentration and so forth, the mind will do what its tendencies are. So there's only so much you can make things happen in meditation practice. A wise person, you set up the conditions and you relinquish what feels unwholesome. Mostly your practice is about relinquishing. This is not necessary, this is not necessary, this is unskillful. And just your holding is to hold a simple reference point that you trust, that's accessible, that you can manage to hold without becoming too intense or adding too much mental pressure or agitation to your mind. This quality of mental pressure and agitation is becomes a problem for meditators, because they think they want to have concentration, and therefore they put pressure on their mind to arrive at concentration. And you definitely arrive at something, but generally you find yourself arriving at a rather over-intense, pressurized state of mind, with perhaps strange phenomena arising in it, which occur when the mind is put under pressure. We might experience strange lights or sounds or energies, and even think this is great stuff, but they can be very deceptive and deluding, because really we want to have that clarity to be able to relinquish. So when you're practicing, you call it deep concentration, I say deep or thorough reference, strong mindfulness, to see what's necessary, what's unnecessary, what's unskillful, what's skillful. Pick up the signs, so one has to be receptive to what is skillful. And again, if you're too forceful about trying to meditate, you lose some of the receptivity, the openness of mind, because you're putting pressure on it. With that loss of receptivity, one loses some of the calm and spaciousness and ease of the mind. So cultivating this, you'll find that the deepening process is a sense where the mind feels comfortable, settled and happy, and it's not going anywhere else. And this is something that arrives. Now, also with the sense of deep concentration, please bear in mind that it's possible to suppress things with concentration that should not be suppressed. It's possible to sidestep mental attitudes and habits that should be actually dealt with and witnessed and investigated. And so it can be the case for meditators who very firmly insist on getting concentrated. They're actually can be quite opinionated or unpleasant people, because they never really dealt with their sense of how they feel about other people being around, or their nervousness or agitation or their conceit. So if the concentration is relatively light, enables one to see the habits of our mind, the habits of our life, and begin to own those and investigate those and put them to one side. As they're cleared, as we see the illusion and the harmfulness of our mental habits, if they're seen with wisdom and they're relinquished, then again the mind will settle. So the process of concentrating is something whereby you have to find a middle way. Now, if you just let your mind drift any old way, then all kinds of discursive phenomena can come in and distract you. Enough reference point, but if you practice too intensely, you may bypass or not investigate qualities of mind that should be investigated, such as ill will, such as sorrow, such as harshness, such as guilt, these things. And these should be investigated, because the aim of our practice is to clear karma. Mind has cleared karma, cleared the karma, the old karma. It's cleared the old karma, therefore there's not the basis for fresh karma. This is the process that's leading to the end of birth and death. Now with concentration, the problem can be that if you don't deal with this old karma, you suppress it, then when you come out of concentration, you're back in it again. And you haven't actually cleared anything. So it's a recommendation that one's attitudes towards concentration should be sustain mindfulness, sustain honesty, deal with what arises. So the process, the enlightenment factors, sati, First one, Dhammavicaya, investigate phenomena, energy, the right kind of balance, so it's an energy that's sustainable, it's not just forced, and the quality of energy and effort is to put aside what's unskillful and to pick up what's skillful. So this is quite active. Yeah. But this leads to the refreshing and the clearing out of mental preoccupations and memories. And therefore, through this one realizes passaddhi, tranquility, soothing, and from this samadhi arises. I think it's always useful to as a simple phrase, to recognize samadhi is not something you do, it's something that happens. It's not an action, it's a state. When actions, we've done enough actions that we don't have something else to do. We arrive at a state of settledness. So in this way, the word concentration sometimes is not so good way of translating the word samadhi. Because concentration is often something one does. Yeah. And so the other word that is occasionally referred to is unification. So samadhi is unification, when all the dissonances have settled because one has worked out, one has cleared the resistances or the ill will, and therefore one's mind settles into something that's balanced and complete in itself. Now, if you're finding joy in your life as it is, pleasurable tinging sensations, and one of attentive to breathing while doing daily activities, that's an encouraging sign. So when you sit quietly and you're experiencing that, see if you can contemplate the changeable nature of that tingling and what is it that witnesses it, and incline towards, is there anything, how does this settle? What happens when it passes? Is there a settledness? What is being activated? Tingling is a subtle activation or sankhara. What is being activated? And is it possible that could also be relinquished, deactivate? This would certainly be a useful way to make use of this agreeable and skillful experience. So we see experience as something that in itself is not a final end result. Experience is something that this is good, this is fine, this is beautiful. It's experience. And is there a stepping back from that? Is there a release of that? So, how do we overcome our guilt and shame that result from our past mistakes? I feel that sharing the wrongdoing that I have done would drive my loved ones away. This is such a thing as dealing with one's guilt skillfully and having the wisdom to not tell our loved ones our past mistakes, knowing that it might hurt them. Yeah. Well, there's a few things in that question. Guilt and shame that result from our past mistakes. It's not quite accurate. Guilt and shame arise from remembering our past mistakes. They arise from remembering them and being not being able to forgive. Now, it cannot be the case that no one has ever made a mistake. So the requirement is to acknowledge a mistake, that was a mistake, to recognize mistakes happen, everyone makes mistakes, this is a mistake. Why is it a mistake? Because it creates this effect. And therefore feel, right, I have learnt that, now is the time to heal this error through a quality of compassion, forgiveness and goodwill. Because the nature of remembering is always very biased and partial. So it's not the mistakes, it's the remembering. There was an occasion when the Buddha was asked this similar question. And he said, well, you think about it, is it the mistakes or is it the mind that keeps going back to them? He said, now you take someone like a bloody-handed murderer. Say this murderer kills 6 people a day, every day of the week, and maybe stabs them. How long does it take to stab a person to death? Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes? So in a day he spends 60 minutes stabbing people, approximately. So this means he spends 23 hours not stabbing people. Right? So therefore he's mostly living in purity. You get it? So if he stabbed 6 people a day and each one took 10 minutes, he would only spend 1 hour murdering, and the 23 hours he'd be not murdering. So he's mostly living a very pure life. 23 to 1 is quite a strong, bias in favour of the good, isn't it? So you can't just say it's the action that did it, because if you made a mistake, you probably spent 10 times as long not making that mistake. Why didn't you remember that? Why you don't remember it is because the nature of the mistake, the mind has a sense of hiriotapa, which means conscience and concern. This is a natural human quality, and it keeps remembering that. It keeps going back to it. It keeps going back to it. So it makes it dominant. Now say you have a rash on your leg. That rash on your leg, your hand keeps going back and scratching it. You have a rash on your leg. You say, oh, I tell this terrible rash on my leg. This is driving me crazy. So how big is the rash? Oh, it's at least 10 centimeters. Okay, how long is your body? Oh, it's about 1.50 meters. Well, most of you is in great condition. Why don't you focus on that? You only got 10 centimeters out of 1.50 meters. That's good. But why you go back to the rash? That becomes the dominant feature, right? So it's not the rash is the problem. It's that it dominates your mind. Your mind goes back to it a lot and is dominated by it. That's the problem. So how do we not get dominated by our mistakes? Yeah? We say, that was a mistake, I understand that. Stop scratching it. Stop scratching it. Be grateful that you might have learned something that you won't do again. Think, oh, wonderful, I have learned something. And the Buddha said it is considered a great gain, a great benefit, a great sense of progress when one who transgresses understands, I have transgressed. This is a mistake. I will refrain from that in the future. He said this is a great sign of progress. But then what you have to do to fulfill that is recognizing, cultivating the quality of loving, kindness, acceptance and compassion to yourself and to anyone else you may have felt you've harmed. This is just a very sane way to live. So the Brahma Vihara, the Appamana divine abidings, are not just meditation objects, they are the standard for human relationships. Well, if you don't practice with sympathy, joy, compassion and goodwill, if you don't establish that as your living standard, the way you relate to other people, then, you know, there's bound to be both harmful speech, dismissiveness, indifference, a lack of jealousies and quarrels. And so you're bound to experience the results of that. The norm, the standard for human relationships is, oh, how are you? We want to have sympathy for another person rather than, well, you're that. You're one of those. You go and do this. Well, you're this. We believe in our perceptions of other people. We believe in our ideas about other people. We believe in what we think about other people. And we never actually ask the other person, what's happening for you? With a sense of sympathy. So this is just bad conduct. And then you're bound to have a sense of, if you do that to others, you do it to yourself. If you see other people just as objects, you become an object. You have no sympathy for yourself. But if you cultivate a sense of goodwill as a normal way of perceiving people, you begin to perceive yourself with a mind of goodwill. And this means, well, you made a mistake, yeah, that wasn't so good. Okay, if you learned something, good, great, good for you. Well, here we, let's move on. Right? And the Buddha pointed this out as the way of clearing the past. Now, in terms of your loved ones, it may be that they don't really, it's not they're not interested, perhaps they don't even think your mistakes are that big, because they made mistakes too. Yeah. So you think, well, if I tell them the things I did, they'll be disgusted with me and hate me forever. Well, those aren't loved ones. The sense of love, true love, is the ability to open up to other people. And the sense of the good friend is someone who doesn't reject people because they make mistakes. The good friend is someone who doesn't give up on you. And so actually, if you have a good friend, or you feel you have a good friend, you feel you need to or you want to say, I did something, I just, then you'll find out whether they're a good friend. And say, oh well, yeah, we all do stupid things. This doesn't sound so bad to me, or I did the same kind of thing, or I did worse than that. That's the good friend. And good friends are a treasure. Even one good friend is a treasure. If you have two, you're in really good company. If you have more than that, you must have done a lot of skillful things in your previous life. Yeah. So these are things to reflect upon. So you look into your own mind. What would you say if one of your loved ones said to you, "Oh, I did this terrible thing," right? And they say the thing that you did? What would your response be? Would you hate them, or would you say, "Oh, that's I can see you have a lot of regret for that. That's difficult." Well, have you changed? Have you done better? Yeah, I don't do that anymore. Well, good for you, Would you respond like that? Or would you just say, "Hey, you scum, get out of my life. 5 years ago you did that. You're a terrible disgrace," Just think, how would that other people really respond to you? Can you respond to yourself in that way? If you're not, then the most important loved one isn't present. The most important loved one is you. You should be a loved one to yourself. That's the most important one. That's the one who lives with you night and day, who knows everything you've done, who knows everything you've done, who witnessed it all. And if that one's not a friend, you're in trouble. So it's important to get that one to be the friend. If you've got that one, you can manage. And if you get a few other people who are pretty good, that's a lot. That's good. But the most important loved one is you. Be a loved one to yourself, to your mind. And then you'll feel there's something there that supports you, guides you, encourages you, reminds you, says you can do better than this. This isn't worthy of you. I know you can do better than this. Someone who encourages, and be this to yourself. And then these guilts and regrets can pass away.
Maybe we have time for one last question, Ajahn. Any last questions before we end the talk? Anybody? Last question? Oh, you have? Okay.
Thank you, Longpo Sucitto, for your talks. Can you maybe explain more on how to deal with anxieties? Regarding this morning's talk, could you please?
Can't hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for your talks, Longpo Sucitto. Regarding this morning's talk, could you please explain more on dealing with anxieties?
Couldn't hear it.
Explain more about dealing with anxieties.
Anxiety. Anxiety. Okay. Well, there's plenty of good reasons to experience anxiety. Life is fragile. The world is infiltrated with abuse and harmfulness and deceit. So there's certainly every reason to feel anxiety. So one should give attention to that which is not anxious. There's things we can attend to that will generate anxiety, that should generate anxiety. That's what they do. The things that should actually make us, hey, be careful, watch out, this might go wrong. Then we're attentive. But when it's the neurotic, it's like the mind can't do anything else. It only goes to the anxiety. It doesn't know the non-anxiety. So, with encouragement is to give careful attention to the places and the areas and the experiences that are not subject to anxiety. So this is a sense of safety, security, freedom from blame and intrusion, freedom from loss, something that you don't have to keep supporting, something that stands by itself. And this is an experience we can begin to access in our own body and our own mind. So the experience of safety is something to arrive at through when you sit down, when you stand, when you sit down, notice the earth is underneath you, it's lifting you up. The space around you is free and open. Yeah. Life is being given to you. You didn't create it. So these are qualities that something is offering: presence, stability, and life. And that's arrived at. We could say we live in a very fragile and vulnerable condition, but we're constantly being given warmth, air, suitable climate, ground beneath our feet, and it's up to us to give attention to that. Now, these may be just physical realities that don't deal with the state of the finances or the business affairs or the state of one's health, or what will happen in the future. But the nature of mind is that when you attend carefully and deeply and fully to these simple signs of stability, the mind becomes stable. In its stability, it knows its own nature. Its own nature is open, its own nature is wise, its nature is not anxious. Anxiety gets conditioned into it. When you know the mind, then you abide in the mind. You can return to it. You can return to the knowing. You can return to the ground. You can return to the out-breath. Yeah. And so this is a way where we constantly touch into making our refuge, which is the very significant term in Buddhism, the refuge. We take refuge in awakened. We take refuge in the true natural truth, the natural order. We take refuge in the Sangha, which is the practices and the practitioners who cultivate with integrity. Now this comes down to taking refuge in your presence, your awareness, and your skillfulness. So, there are things that are frightening, disturbing, annoying, disappointing, uncertain. I know I can speak truth. Therefore I give attention to that. I know I can offer goodwill. Therefore I give attention to that. Nothing need prevent me from offering goodwill. Goodwill, when I offer it, makes me feel rich and comfortable. It is not a state of anxiety. I know that I can witness what goes on. Yeah. However it is, the mind has this quality of witnessing and discernment in it. This quality is not anxious. I know I can cultivate generosity. Nothing need stop me cultivating generosity. It's generosity in terms of anything material, but also in terms of offering service, offering attention, offering advice, offering Dhamma. Nothing need take that away from me. Therefore I have qualities that I can rely upon. I should give careful attention to what I can rely upon, that is reliable, that is beautiful, that is sustaining, that is truthful. My mind will find confidence in that. This is the way you deal with anxiety. You notice the situations that make you feel anxious. It could be people you don't know. It could be going to a strange place. Uncertainty, unsettled. Stop, don't go out there, go to this. Give yourself a few minutes, just stay in this. Find your own ground, and then look at the world. Don't try to find confidence in the world around you. Don't try to find stability in places and people. Find it in your own mind, and then relate to places and people with confidence and generosity and goodwill. This is the way you develop confidence. And you see that wherever you go, you can still do that. So some of that nervousness can begin to be relinquished.